last week we I mentioned that we're going to be probably going into the teaching in the pastoral epistles, and I said, but I'm not sure what's going to happen. And I asked everybody to pray for me because you know you have one idea what you think the Lord wants you to do, and I know enough to not put a stake in the ground before Shabbat morning. I just know that's just the way it happens. And so I was kind of preparing, for teaching in First Timothy, and I was going back in the history because I like to do the historical facts first to get everybody and what's been going on during that time, so you have a good idea. And somewhere along the line, by Thursday, I could sense the Lord was like, "Nah, that's not what you want to do." Now he didn't say you're not going to teach that. I'm talking about for today. Because he brought my mind back to this whole thing about Pesach and Passover. And I know that Pesach is coming up in a couple of days. And so, we're going to go on this journey. We're going to go on this journey about Pesach, and we're going to do a little bit of Pesach or Easter. Elaine just kind of did that. She was like, oh, what's he talking about? Well, we're in a culture that Easter is right there in front of your face. And you have to ask the question, well, the millions of Christians are going to celebrate Easter. What camp am I in? How come I ain't in their camp? Hello? Why am I not marching with them? Now, I ain't got nothing against them. Let me be clear. Because me, as a child growing up, I got to tell y'all, one of the highlights of my childhood was the congregation that my father was pastor of. They used to have what's called Easter sunrise service. So Easter sunrise service, we're not going to the regular church. Guess where we're going? We're going to a football stadium. Oh yeah. So I know about Easter Sunday. Okay? Oh, and it was a highlight because I would love, because we would go there, we would do the real sunrise, not like they do here. We go in there before the sun come up in the dark, and the sunrise, and you sing. And let me tell you, as a little boy, that was my impression. So it's a little bit hard. When I found out, I was 26. Wait a minute. No, I was 20. But I was 27. I just got married. When I realized, oh my goodness, my Easter sunrise service was pagan. Now, let me pull that back a little bit again. So, most believers today think Easter and Passover are the same thing. They do. Just different name. But they're not. They're very different observance with very different origins in the scriptures. Passover is a specific appointed time established by God in Leviticus 23. By now, if you've been coming to Ahavat for a while, Leviticus 23 should just be something that you just know. If you want to follow where all the feast days are, all the Moedims, it's right there, Leviticus 23. That whole chapter goes through the whole thing. So Passover commemorates Israel's deliverance from Egypt, where Easter is something else entirely, and entirely different. First, Easter is not in the scriptures. I really used to go back after found all this stuff out. I asked myself, well, where did I get this stuff from? Now, I'm not going to go into the whole Easter and all the way, but I don't go into the history. If any one of you want to know all the history of all that stuff, just go and Google it, and it'll tell you everything. I'm sure AI can give you every little detail you want about Easter. And if that don't suffice, call Pastor Rod. He can tell you everything you need to know about Easter. He's that good. He's an encyclopedia when it comes to that stuff. I'm not. But but a couple little notes that I have here. So we know that Easter is not a biblical feast. It isn't tied to the Moedim set by the Most High God. Right there, to me, right there, you should let loose of it. Don't need to know all the history. It ain't tied to the Moedim of God. And I got to be careful. I almost said Moedims. I don't know why, but this Moedim is the plural. So Easter enters history after the apostles, as the early church, they sought to create its own calendar, separate from the Jewish calendar and from the Jewish Passover. And over time, Easter became associated with the Resurrection Sunday, like I was just telling you about. It became, symbols like the Easter egg and the rabbit, which are all rooted in fertility festivals. And then the timing also was determined by what? By the Roman calendar. That's about all I'm going to say about it. I'm just letting you know that they're not the same thing. Easter and Passover is not the same thing. We know that biblically, Messiah died on Passover, on the appointed time that God set for remembering redemption by the blood of the Lamb. And then we see centuries later that some believers celebrate Easter that was tied to that first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. There's all stuff you can Google this. I said this is a date completely separate from the biblical calendar. This is why even today, biblical timing of Passover or Pesach and the Roman calendar timing of Easter will never coincide. They will never coincide. So, if we want to worship God according to his appointed times, we need to understand the difference. We see that from when you go back to history, that the church in Rome took pagan festivals and give them Christian labels so they can slap a label on. Okay, we're going to make it Christian. But God says, don't do that. Don't take the pagan stuff and try to whitewash it and clean it up and make it my festival. God said, don't do that. Don't do it. Can't do it. And so we see that these holidays, they kind of disguise themselves as truth, but they're rooted in traditions and not in the scripture. This is why, understanding the Moedim today, anything that doesn't align with God's appointed times is directing us from the proper worship of God. Now think about it. So God set up these times, right? And anything you do that's not according to what he set up, it's diverting you from what he set in place. Now, don't be like the way I was, I was young when I first learned about the Moedim, and I just was terrible. I was bad. Meaning, I got so what's the word? Zealous. Love it. I got so zealous, I really did this, and it was, I look back now and I apologize later on. I got so zealous, I called all my family and I said, hello, all y'all pagan. I know, it's terrible. And I told them, I said, don't send me no Christmas cards. Don't send me nothing that deals with Easter. Don't. And I have to be funny because one of I'm the youngest boy in the family. So I have very older sisters that all think that they're my mother. So one of my older sisters said to me, she says, I don't care what you say. I'm still going to send you Easter stuff. I'm going to send you Christmas stuff. And you know what? She did. Isn't it funny how God works? And so in my whole zealousness, I just, my whole attitude was wrong. Yeah, I was trying to do right, but my attitude was wrong. So we shouldn't have an attitude of getting upset at people who celebrate Easter. We shouldn't have an attitude. I have changed so much. Let me put it this way. The Lord has changed me so much. In the way I was when I was a young believer and didn't have any space for what I thought was something that wasn't of God. And I have repented and have changed. But the one thing I have not changed on is that if something is of God, that's what I'm doing. I'm going down with that. I'm not going backwards. There is no going backwards. Because God is who He said He is. So when we return to the appointed time set by God, we reclaim the rhythm of worship that God intended for us. I've said this many times before that I was going to do a teaching of all the Moedims and show the thread of the Moedims from the point of where the Passover all the way to the 8th day rejoicing in the kingdom of God. And maybe one day we'll do that. But they do set a pattern for us that we as believers can see the mastery of God, of His timing, of His plan of redemption. And we should all desire to do that. So now take this journey with me. Benjamin, if you can put up on the screen Exodus. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 12. We're going to read it through in a minute. But let me say a few words. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, it says, the Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month, which is the month of Nisan. And it says on the 15th day of that month is the Lord's Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, I want you to notice something. How He always says in the scriptures, it's the Lord's feast. Go back and look at it. It's not the Jewish feast. Yes, God gave it to the Jewish people, but it's the Lord's feast. It's God's feast. He says, for 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, that is Nisan 15, the 15th day of Nisan, you are to have a sacred assembly and do no work. For 7 days you are to present an offering made to the Lord by fire. And on the seventh day of the feast, which would be the 21st day of the month. Don't worry about all that. We can put it down for you if you need some help with that. The 21st day of the month of Nisan, you shall have a sacred assembly and do no work. Now, the 21st day of Nisan for us this year is the 8th of April. We're going to have a gathering on that evening, I think it's a Wednesday, to break that fast. It's interesting that Pesach or Passover lasts 8 days, and during this time, no leavened foods are to be eaten. Leviticus 23:6 indicates that the 7 subsequent days following Pesach are actually entirely a different Moed called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But modern Jewish observance has kind of combined these two feasts into one 8-day festival that they call Pesach. So if you hear Pesach is 8 days, that's what they mean. If you want to say Pesach is 1 day, it's fine too. Because technically, Pesach is that evening on the 14th day. The Feast of Unleavened Bread starts on the 15th. But you see many times, you see in if you go Google how many days is Pesach, you might see it says 8. That's how they get 8. They combine the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Through the symbolism and celebration, we see that Jewish families and Gentiles are reminded of the great redemption of the very first Passover, or the very first Pesach. So now we're going to read Exodus chapter 12. We're going to just take a journey. Exodus 12, we read from verse 1 to verse 24. We'll try to go slowly if we can. It says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month, Nisan, shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Now, digressing, and I'm not going to go in there. We know that the Jewish people have like 50 calendars. I'm just joking. They got a calendar for the trees, a calendar for when you do this. Anyway, they have the secular calendar, the religious calendar. For right now, we're going by what it says here in Exodus chapter 12, that the first month, that Nisan is the first month. So speak on children of Israel, speak on all the congregation, saying, In the 10th day of this month, you shall take every man a lamb according to the house of his fathers, a lamb for every house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbors next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. So if your house only got 2 people and you got a lamb that's 100 pounds, then what God is saying is that, well, share some of that with your neighbor who might not have. So he's saying, because we'll see the reason why. Because you can't keep it for the next day. So if you think you're going to have a 100-pound lamb and you're going to eat 20 and you're going to keep 80, it's spoiled. It's gone. Yes, it's gone. So God is saying, get a lamb according to your household. And if your household is small, get half a lamb. Share it with your neighbor. I think it's very, very interesting. I'm gonna take a liberty, and I'm gonna tell. I've told this story a million times, and I realized something. I realized that I'm getting old. See, because old people do this. They say the same story every time. And I used to wonder, why they saying the same story every time? Now I'm doing it. I'm old. I really realized I'm just doing the same thing I was there. Why they gotta tell the same story? So here goes my story. Some of y'all know the story, right? So I was 27. Again, I'm young. Just got married. I'm going to Worldwide Church of God. That's where I learned about the Moedim and the holy days. It wasn't, okay, let's just leave that alone. That's where I am. And I'm learning about Passover. So I'm figuring, why don't I do the real thing? I mean, I'm reading it in there. They got a lamb, they slaughter it, they put the blood. Hello. Why didn't I do that? I could do it. So I decided to go get a lamb. And fast forward the story. I couldn't remember where I went to get this lamb, but a buddy of mine, he was from Jamaica. So we're two kindred. He's Jamaican, I'm Guyanese. We're like, yeah, we can do this. So I told my wife that I was going to get a lamb. I don't think she heard me what I was saying. I think she think I was just joking. Oh, he going to get a lamb. Wait, where you going to get a lamb from? She's sleeping. I left early before the sun is up. We went, I don't know how many hours. We went to this farmer's place. We bought a lamb. Big old joker. We had the man cut it up and everything. And I hate to tell you this, I made so many bad mistakes. I forgot that I got 40 pounds of lamb. Where am I put this 40 pounds of lamb? I ain't even got a cooler, nothing. Yes, mistake number 50 or whatever it is. I put all the meat in the garbage bag. I figure I got to get it home. So I come home all happy. I'm just tickled. I got me some fresh lamb, and I walk in the door, and she woke up by then. She said, what you got in that bag? I'm all happy, right? I'm bouncing, coming over to the fridge. Oh, I got me a lamb. She says, in the bag? I said, yeah, it's right in there. So she came over and touched the bag. Of course, the thing is still warm. I just got it, Elaine. I just killed it. I just brought it home. And she said to me, you really went and got a lamb? I said, I thought that's what I told you. She said, well, you going to eat that by yourself. Yes. Okay, y'all know the context. She's from New York. I'm from the bushes. She looked at me and she said, well, you going to eat that? Because I ain't eating that. Because in her mind, lamb comes from the grocery store. Not a knucklehead going bringing some lamb from wherever she don't know. In the trash bag. I could tell you some more things of the story, but anyway, I ate 40 pounds of lamb by myself. Yes, I did. I sure did. It was good. Let me just let y'all know. There's more to the story, but we ain't got time. And I decided I will never do that again. He just messed up my whole plan. I never did it again. Okay. So it says here, going back, I do remember something. You remember, I was about to read, it says, your lamb shall be without blemish. So here is me. We go to the place, and I'm trying to find a lamb. Okay, let me see a lamb without blemish. I don't even know what I'm looking for. But I'm figuring a lamb without blemish means he ain't supposed to have no scabs. He ain't supposed to have no mangy-looking stuff. So I'm looking at all. I'm like, give me that one right there. That looked like the one without blemish. It's funny, man. It's really funny. But it was good. It says, so you take this... Oh, my goodness. Without blemish, a male of the first year, we try to follow all that. You sure did. You take it out of the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and upon the doorposts of the house, wherein you shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted with fire. Let me tell you something. That's a good way of making some lamb. But I gotta throw a little bit of shaky little seasoning on that, you know. We ain't just roasting it. We putting a little barbecue sauce on that. I'm joking. I just messed up. I'm sorry. Think about this. If you're back in the day and the Lord tell you roast this lamb, I don't think he said don't put no seasoning on it. Did he say that? So I'm putting some on there. Little herbs. What kind of herbs go good with lamb? Rosemary. There we go. Sprinkle a little rosemary on there. Oh, the roasting part I like though. So he says, and you should roast it with fire, put a little rosemary and a little shake of seasoning and unleavened bread and with some bitter herbs, you shall eat it. Now I gotta tell you, bitter herbs kind of go good with some lamb. Now we know we use horseradish as bitter herbs, but there's some bitter herbs. I'm sure Miss Diane know, but some bitter herbs. I mean, when I was a kid, this is not a joke. My parents give us what they call bitters once a month. Oh, let me tell you, you don't want some of that stuff. This thing is so bitter. But in the old days, they say they have to, your blood, as kids, you eat too much sweet. I'm sure Miss Diane know what I'm talking about. That they have to bitter your blood for you. It must work because I'm telling you. Who said it's true? Yes, it's true. And those bitters, you have to like swap it down because you can't just. Anyway, I keep digressing because I'm having fun. But bitter herbs is not horseradish. Let me let y'all know a little secret. No, it's bitter herbs. There's a herb that's so bitter that it's called bitter. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need to really calm down myself. This joy thing is just, I don't know where it's going right now. I can't keep myself straight. Okay, where are we? The bitter herbs, right? And you shall eat it. It says, don't eat it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast it with fire. So don't take your lamb and boil it. Don't take your lamb and put it in the oven. Don't put it in the oven, Miss Linda. You gotta roast it in the fire. It's like a barbecue. We're having a big barbecue, a lamb barbecue. That's what we're having. They ain't had no oven back then. What do you think they did? 2 sticks. Boy, I tell you, I could see myself back then, I'm telling you. I'd have me some good roasting lamb. Anyway, and you shall eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night. I will smite all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt. Now, we all know, without going through a lot of detail, that all the plagues struck one god of Egypt until they were all gone. All the gods of Egypt. God was trying to say, there ain't only one God. I don't care what you call your God. You can call him Thor. You can call him the baddest dude on the planet. Whatever you want. What's that guy that in the movie that have all the stones thingy, man? What they call him? Thanos. Some of y'all don't know what I'm talking about. You call him Thanos. He got all the in nothing to the master of the universe, the God. And God was showing in all the miracles and all was that none of the gods of Egypt could stand to him. That's what he was showing. He says right here. Anyway, and I will execute judgment. I am the Lord, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon your house where you are. And when I see the blood, I will skip. I will jump over. That's Passover, you know. You realize that, right? When I see the blood, I'm passing over you. Okay? So what does Pesach mean? Jump over. Okay. Maybe it's a big name. That's my name. I'm going to pass over you. And the plague shall not come upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generation. You shall keep it a feast for an ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Sometimes we forget, 7 days you must eat matzah. Not if you feel like it. Now, my household, my wife loves matzah. She eats matzah throughout the whole year. I got boxes of matzah in my house right now. So we are matzah eating people. I have to say, again, I'm being funny, so don't take this too seriously. I think it's Jewish people that don't like matzah. I think Gentiles like matzah. I just made that up. I'm sorry. I know. Y'all going to be all mad at me. Because, okay, I'm just talking about my experience. You do? Okay, there we go. We got 1, 2, 3. Okay. I have heard more complaints about matzah from Jewish people than from Gentiles. I'm sorry, I have. Maybe y'all didn't. Oh, it ain't got no taste. They got all kind of problems with it. You come to my house, I take a matzah, and I make me an egg, and I slap it on that matzah, put a little bit of cheese on there. I'm giving y'all my secret. There you go. I make matzah in all kinds of ingenious ways. That's just me. I throw a piece of sauce. I mean, that's just me. Look, if God says to eat this thing, I'm going to have fun eating it. That's just the way I am. He didn't say I got to eat the plain matzah with nothing. I put cream cheese on there. Oh, I do. Unsalted butter. Lane, I'm a little bit more creative, but I'm not going to give you all the secrets. If you want, you can come talk to me. I gave you a few there just now, but I'm not giving you all my matzah secrets. No. Lasagna? I never did that. Okay. But, okay, for 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall put away leaven out of your house. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. You realize that back in the day, if you didn't follow this, there was some serious consequences. And in the first day, there shall be a holy convocation. We talked about that. In the 7th day, there shall be a holy convocation to you. No matter of work shall be done. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generation by an everlasting ordinance, by an ordinance forever, forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, and it goes on. I'm not going to read the rest at this point. It talks about you take the hyssop and you dip it in the blood, put it in the doorpost. We all know all that by now. And it says, you shall observe these things for an ordinance for thee and for thy sons. You're supposed to pass it down. Now, I want to show y'all, everybody know this book. If you've been at Ahavat, you know this book. And I'm going to recommend, if you don't have one, you get one. It's very good. Every year, I read this book every year. Just for me. I like to kind of go back. He does a good job of explaining the Moedims. So, say it again. The title is God's Appointed Times. Barney Kasdan. Everybody know this dude. He's a Messianic Jew. Helene's laughing. We're having fun. He wrote another book that I have called, what's it called? Amen. God's Appointed Times. And then he wrote another book. I'll remember it later. But let me just pull a couple of things from this book I'm going to read just for kicks and giggles. So it says here, I want to read the traditional Jewish observance. Well, let me go back a little bit. The meaning of Pesach is found in Leviticus 23. The Hebrew word means to spring or to jump. Oh, see, good there. I didn't notice that. To jump or pass over. And it says, because of the increasing hardness of Pharaoh's heart, God had to send 10 plagues to persuade the blinded leader to let Israel go. As devastating as the first 9 plagues were, it wasn't until the 10th and final plague that Pharaoh acquiesced to the God of Israel. With every judgment of God, there is also a way of escape. And we know that God made a way not only for the Egyptians, not only for the Israelites, but for the Egyptians. So if an Egyptian took the blood right upon the doorposts of his house and the gates, he was saved. Okay. We know that Pesach clearly typifies redemption in a dramatic way. It is a holy day that commemorates God's deliverance of Israel from the slavery of Egypt. Because of its historical meaning for the Jewish people, the celebration of Pesach is perhaps the most elaborate feast. The Torah says that the people should remove any leavened products from their household. This was to remind them that they had to be free, or they had to flee Egypt so quickly that the bread in their ovens did not have time to rise. Every spring in a Jewish home, a furious house cleaning takes place to remove any leavened products before Passover began. We're having fun. So let me give you not a little story about when I first learned about Pesach and the de-leavening your house, because I was crazy. I really was. Oh, of course. I read that. I read how it talks about removing every piece of leaven. So, of course, I'm going to try to do that. I throw everything out that I ain't clear if it was leaven or not. I was like, I'm cleaning. It's all gone. If I thought it was leaven, it's gone. I had so many bags of stuff. I didn't realize how much stuff is leaven. You'd be surprised. Now, I'm not as fanatic right now. I just can't even do it. It don't matter if I want to. I ain't got the bandwidth right now to go. I do the bare minimum. I make sure there ain't no bread, big loaf of bread in there. So I'm sure in some crack somewhere there was leaven, but back in the day when I was trying to do this, I got a Q-tip. Oh, I was that crazy. And a vacuum cleaner with a long nozzle. Oh, I'm going through, toaster. I'm going through every cabinet. Oh, I was getting it. It's crazy. But anyway, let's keep going. So after cleaning the house, preparation for the central tradition associated with the day of Pesach, which is the Seder meal, and we're going to have that Seder meal on Wednesday. And now we see it says that the Israelites shall commemorate by eating three things. They're supposed to eat lamb, matzahs, and bitter herbs. That was the original, three things. And then the rabbis, like rabbis just always got to do. There's one thing that I have a little beef with rabbis. They got to add stuff that God didn't even say to add. And then they get on their high horse. Oh boy, I better stop. I don't want to offend nobody. Okay? But remember, God says, these are the same people that Yeshua says, y'all bringing all these burdens on people that y'all yourself ain't doing. But anyway, so originally it was just these three things. Later on in history, the rabbis added the fifth cup called the cup of Elijah. This particular cup is filled with the hope that the prophet Elijah will come. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm reading what someone else wrote. I wasn't there back when they made the three things. Now, I'm assuming this dude did some research. He's Jewish. Okay? I'm trying to be funny. But I don't have a problem with adding all whatever people want to add. I really don't. There's certain things that you don't divide over. You know? How you want to keep, somebody might want to say, well, how you keep the Passover and all the different things you do. But let me just go through. So it says later in history, they added the fifth cup of Elijah, and biblical holidays, feast special meaning to foods, and all this remain. They also add, where is that? Somewhere I saw where they add the eggs and all that kind of stuff. Let me jump around here because I know time is. So let's kind of skip to since we don't have a lot of time, to the new covenant observance. I think that's important. So again, everybody, this year we're going to do Pesach in your home. You're free to use any Haggadah you want to use. We don't have a thou shalt use this Haggadah. Actually, let me not say that. Okay. If you need an Haggadah, ask, we will give you one. An Haggadah is the little booklet that tells you, kind of walk you through. But I'm going to just say this. I got to say, if you don't have an Haggadah, I recommend you read Exodus chapter 12. Just walk it through. Just go through it. Absorb it slowly. Understand the meaning. Now, if you got an Haggadah and you go through, which I will do, I have different kind of Haggadahs in my house, and I will go through the Haggadah and walk the whole thing through. Okay, most of this tradition was fully developed before the first century. It is not surprising to see numerous reference to Passover in the New Covenant. Passover is mentioned in the Gospels account. In Luke chapter 2, verse 41, in John chapter 5, verse 1, and John chapter 6, verse 4, as well as in the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 12, verse 3 to 4. By far the most famous account is the last Passover celebrated by Yeshua and his Jewish disciples in the upper room that we see in Matthew 26 that we always reference, and in Luke 22. In these passages, one sees the tradition of the first century and some spiritual lessons taught by Messiah. Among the traditional items mentioned are the lamb in Luke chapter 2, verse 8, the bitter herbs, Matthew chapter 26, verse 3, the washing in John chapter 13, verse 1 to 15. All this is in the New Covenant Scripture. So for those who might think, over the Passover, just the old stuff, this is all mentioned in New Covenant Scriptures. The 4 cups, which we do, which we see in Matthew chapter 26 and Luke 22, and the matzah in Matthew chapter 26, verse 26. The lamb reminds one of the meaning of redemption, the blood of the sacrifice. In this case, Messiah became our Pesach. The important thing is to understand that Messiah became our Pesach. So again, as we're doing this, we're not doing this without context. We're not doing this blindly. We're not doing this like we're in Egypt. We're not doing this, please don't. Please don't go get a chicken and get some blood and put it on your doorpost. It might be tempting. I ain't laughing. You don't have to do that. Okay? The blood of the sacrifice, Yeshua became our Passover. Bitter herbs speak of the terrible bondage to an oppressor. Not surprisingly, it was in the bowels of this bitter herbs that Judas, a man who came to bitter end, dipped his matzah. So we see that even in that, there was a bitter issue that was dealt with. We see the hands and foot washing, typifying the need of cleansing before approaching a holy God. Now, that just reminds me, when I was attending Worldwide Church of God during Pesach, we did the foot washing. Really did. Everybody bring their bowl when you come to the Passover, and you select somebody, did the foot washing. Now, we don't, there's lots of reasons why we don't do the foot washing right now. Anyhow, each of the 4th cup of wine teaches us an important lesson. According to the ancient rabbi, these 4 cups are based on the 4 promises given to the children of Israel in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. Therefore, says the Lord, I am the Lord, I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with the mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. The cup of sanctification appears at the start of the Seder. How appropriate to sanctify or set apart the service as a special one to the Lord. The 2nd cup is known as the cup of praise, sometimes called the cup of plague, because we must praise the Holy One who has done such great things. The 3rd cup is the cup of redemption, was designated by Messiah Yeshua as a special memorial through all generation. It was once a memorial cup of physical redemption for the Jews from Egypt. For believers in Yeshua, this cup symbolizes the spiritual redemption found in Messiah's sacrifice. How often should one celebrate the Last Supper? We know it talks about in 1 Corinthians, it says, as often as you eat this, you show forth my death until I return. So how often is often? We know that some churches look at that as being every week. We look at the often from a Passover point of view as once a year. Okay, let's jump to the prophetic fulfillment, just for context here. After exploring the background of Pesach, the prophetic fulfillment of this holy day is clear. It can best be summed up by the word redemption. Rabbi Shaul, the Apostle Paul, states this theme beautifully and succinctly in his letter to the Corinthian believers. They were told to deal with moral problems within their members, and to make his point, Shaul draws upon the well-understood analogy of Pesach. He said, your boasting is not good. This is 1 Corinthians 5:6-8. Your boasting is not good. Don't you know the saying, it takes only a little chametz to leaven a whole batch of dough. Get rid of the old chametz so that you can be a new batch of dough. Because in reality, you are unleavened. For our Pesach lamb, the Messiah, has been sacrificed. So let us celebrate the Seder, not with leftover chametz, the chametz of weakness and evil, but with the chametz of purity and truth. So we understand that the Passover or Pesach is a time of renewal, time of redemption. As we observe it, we see that Yeshua is our Passover lamb. But then we move straight from the sacrifice and from Pesach into the what? The days of unleavened bread. And the days of unleavened bread, as we know, I'm not going to read any more from this, but I recommend you get it and you can read it of your own. We know that the days of unleavened bread, it signifies that us getting sin out of our lives. How appropriate it is that during those times when we celebrate Pesach, and if you want to say we combine Pesach with the days of unleavened bread for 8 days, that during those times that you're able to examine your life, you're able to look and see what kind of leaven that is still in your life, the leaven that puffs you up, the leaven that makes you not humble, the level that makes you not be contrite, the level that makes you still be in bondage to sin. Of course, we know that the children of Israel was in bondage to Egypt. It's the same way. It's the same bondage that you have if sin still have dominion over your life. It really is. On a serious note, as we do Pesach this year, and of course, every year we do the same thing. You know, it's amazing. I mean, I love it. I love it that God says to do this thing every year. Think about it. If God said, well, every 20 years, like the cicadas, you do your Passover. I don't know why that just came. I'm sorry. What, 17 years the cicada comes out the hole? But God, who knows human nature, who knows that we forget, who knows we can't keep things straight, he reminds us every year about Pesach. And he reminds us every year about the days of unleavened bread. And then he reminds us about counting the Omer. And he reminds us about that 50 days that we're counting the Omer, waiting for the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Not that you don't have God's Holy Spirit, but every year as we do this exercise, and we're going to do it this year, and we're not going to complain about how we count. Oh, yeah, there are a bunch of different ways how we count. We're not going to go into all the detail. You know, I'm going to say for now, Ahavat, Yeshua, we follow the way that the rabbis follow, or we follow the way that the Tikkun follow, or we follow the way the Israelis follow, where we count the first day as the 16th day. Now, we've gone through many times a different way of the counting. We know that the Karaites, they count the first day from the first regular Sabbath. The very next day is the first day. So I'm sure some of y'all in your mind want to know, well, what do I think? Oh, I will tell you. I ain't got no problem saying what I think. Because it comes from the scriptures, so I ain't got no problem that you know the way I see it. Now, oh, I know it's zero, so I don't know why I'm going there. Maybe I should leave that to when we talk about that later on. Okay, I'm going to tell you since you're waiting. Okay. I believe the way the Karaites count seems to me more biblical. I'm just going to be, seems to me. And let me give you some quick little tidbits. Do you know that Shavuot is the only feast day which God didn't say a date? Did you know that? Every other one, he got a date. He said Passover 14, right? 15-day day of unleavened bread. Okay, if he needed the 16th day to start counting the Omer, when he said the 16th day, he start counting the Omer? Every other one. The first day of the 7th month. Every Moedim, God says, this is the day of the Moedim. Okay, I'm going to go back to my rabbi. Me and the rabbi kind of little issue I have with them. They're going to make up the 16th day. Where does it say that? It says that the 50th day must be the day after the Shabbat. That's what it says. How you get there? You cannot use the 16th every year and get to that. Now again, I want us to be very clear. I'm gonna end right here. This is not an argument I have with anybody about how they want to count the days. I'm wonderful with saying, we do it on 16th. But I'll be lying if I tell you that I believe that's the right day. I'm just going to be clear. Oh, I'm doing it that day. You know why? I'm the one that just talked earlier on today about not sowing discord. Did I not say that? I said that. That God don't like when you sow discord. So I ain't sowing discord. But if you ask me a question, I'll tell you. But I'm wonderful. I do it on 16. Because as a community, that's what we do. That's what we do. Well, if you come and ask me, I'll tell you that I'm not sure about that date as being the right date. Did that leave us with a conundrum? I said no, because again, I don't argue with my brothers about that. We do it because to be together, God's heart is for us to be together as a community. If we decide we're going to do it this day, we're going to do it this day. So we got kind of quiet right there. I think he just cut me off because he's trying to tell me stop talking. I know. I went out on a limb that probably get me in trouble. But I don't worry about trouble, so what you gonna do? So back to just put it back in the box. Since I just opened the box of stuff, I'm gonna put it back in the box. That's not important. The important thing is understanding God's intent in the Moedim. Right? And his intent is that in the Moedim that we should see his hand and see his plan of salvation all the way through from Pesach to the last great day. And it's important that we understand that God made these Moedim for us and for us to rejoice in them. The one thing I did not, later on, I did not agree with the Worldwide Church of God on Pesach. They made Pesach solemn. Oh, there. You're supposed to dress in black. Yes, they did. And you come in there, you're not supposed to say a word. at least the one I went to, and everybody was solemn. Because they look at Passover as it says in there, a solemn feast, right? And so they look at Passover as being, yeah. I look at Passover as rejoicing. Rejoicing that God did the miracle of the redemption. So in that respect, I didn't know better back then, though. I came at my black and my solemn. I'm a bold. I sure did. You have no idea of some of the foolishness I've done in my life. Oh, my goodness. Of the grace of God. So how are we going to celebrate Pesach? We're going to have fun. In your home, or if you're, with family, with a bunch of folks, celebrate Pesach with the understanding that Yeshua is our Pesach, in a sense. He's our high priest. So I don't want you celebrating like you're going back to Egypt. You ain't going back to Egypt. That's been done. Egypt's been long gone. We're celebrating it with a looking forward. We're looking forward. As we're doing Days of Unleavened Bread, we're looking forward. As we're counting the old mare, whatever day you're counting, we're looking forward and we're waiting. Isn't it funny how the holy days are? We got a chunk that happens in the spring, 3, then we got a pause, and then we got a chunk that happens in the fall. It's amazing. There's a whole lot into that we can go. But we're going to end there for today.